Okay, so a little bit of a somber beat to start this video, and I do apologize. I know you want energy and I know you want fun, but I have some really bad news. I am not going to be able to make any videos for quite a while. I've got a situation I need to sort out. It's very hard for me to talk about, but I wanted to be honest and I wanted to be transparent. But yeah, I'm gonna go away and you may never see me again. Of course that's not true. If you fell for it, why didn't you remember what the name of this video is? It's about when wrestlers come out and go, ow, my knee, and then go, haha, my knee is fine, and they beat somebody up. That's what I just did, and I know you hate me now. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry, I apologize. So let's just move on and smile and remember that my name is Simon. You are watching What Culture Wrestling. Thank you so much for all of your joy and all of your love. And yes, this is the 10 best times wrestlers did that fake injury shinmagidig, and we all believed it, and so did their opponent. That's not the title. It's far better done. Number 10, Batista. On the 14th of September 2009, Batista turned up to Raw with his arm in like this robotic sling, and there were a lot of rumors going around that if he wasn't going to retire completely, he was about to take a hell of a lot of time off of television, and everybody was scared, and everybody was kind of terrified. We love Big Dave, and we always will. Telling an attack that had come via Randy Orton and Legacy a few months prior, where he had legitimately torn his bicep, he wandered out here with a bunch of bandages and looking like he was about to cry. So yeah, the fear was in the air, you could smell it. It got worse when the Viper arrived to throw this in the face of his former friend, but it was at that moment we all realized this was a ruse. Batista used that cast thing and he smacked Randy Orton right over the head, and the big announcement that WWE had been teasing was that the Animal was coming to SmackDown. He sold this really well though, which is probably why right now, he's a bona fide acting star. Number 9, Linda McMahon. While Linda wasn't physically injured, she was confined to a wheelchair because her husband Vince had drugged her after also telling his wife that he wanted a divorce. Bring back the Attitude Era. Now, we never actually found out the drugs that Vinnie Mac was using, and thank goodness for that. I don't think I would have been able to handle it. But yes, she did just sit there in a comatose state as the chairman of the board did some truly questionable things in front of her. Come WrestleMania 17 though, where Shane and Vince were having a massive war, Linda got up from her sat down position to kick Vince McMahon right in the balls, and this is kind of crazy. WrestleMania 17 is considered one of the best WrestleManias ever, if not the best, and you could argue that this spot gets the loudest reaction even with everything else on the card, and it's probably true. You're now likely asking yourself, well, what did Linda do to get out of this kind of state? The answer is, we don't know. I can only presume that WWE didn't think you would care. Fair play to Linda though, this was without doubt her crowning performance. And while that sounds like an insult because all she was told to do is sit there, it took something and she had it. Number 8, Jerry Lawler. SummerSlam 1993 was meant to see Jerry the King Lawler versus Bret Hart, and if you can believe it, just before the event, Jerry was involved in a horrific car accident, and given the injuries he had suffered, he had to pull out. I mean, woe is me. No one thought he was being honest, but also nobody could prove it. So the King just wandered in and said, well, I think that Doink the Clown, it's a miniature version of Doink the Clown, I think Doink the Clown should have my spot. And actually, to be fair to the Clown, him and the Hitman had an actually pretty decent match, because that's just what Bret Hart did. It of course led to Jerry Lawler attacking Bret from behind, which brought out then General Manager Jack Tunney, or the president of the WWF, to say, you know what, Mr. Lawler, you now have to fight. And that's what we did. We had back-to-back Bret Hart matches, and when you do that, everything is great. But much like everything else that Jerry Lawler did touch during his career, he sold this great, and the whole angle was very well received. 7, Alexa Bliss. At the controversially named Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view in 2017, Alexa Bliss did something with her arm that was so freaky and so disgusting, around about 99% of people watching went, wait a minute, has she just snapped it in two? Say what you want about wrestling, but nobody was looking at that and shouting, oh, it's fake, it's all predetermined. It looked absolutely disgusting. However, as it turned out, Bliss had the power of being double jointed, so she was able to make her arm look like this way, but even here, she was only doing it as a ruse. Sasha Banks, who she was facing, was so shocked by this, she didn't know what to do, which allowed Alexa Bliss to get back on top. And while she would still go on to lose this match, it was so well received and received such a good reaction, it almost became a signature spot for Bliss. She did it all the time. And as I'm saying these words, she hadn't done it in a while, she said absolutely do it again. Now, this was all about suspending your disbelief, and it rocked. Although yes, I will give this to you. Every time WWE did do this, they also zoomed right in with a camera. He wouldn't do that if it was legit. Number 6, Randy Orton. Do you remember Batista's entry from number 10? If you've forgotten, I'm very worried about you, but now let's zoom forward to 2019, do the exact same thing with Randy Orton, but he was staring into the eyes of one AJ Styles. This time it was even better though, because using the power of social media, there was a lot of people reporting that Randy had been injured at a house show, and doctors were saying it did not look good at all. And that all doubled when Orton came out on Raw using crutches, and like the idiots we are, we bought it hook, line, and sinker with cash. The Viper solved this perfectly too and genuinely seemed like he was about to cry, and when AJ Styles arrived to rub this in his face, you were like, AJ, you horrible, horrible man. But as it turned out, Randy was playing us all, and he smashed Styles with the RKO, and every single person in that building cheered as if Christmas had come early. It was a great way to continue their feud, and while of course you can't do this week in and week out because the audience would get used to it, when you give it enough time and you pull the trigger, it is probably a wrestling trope that will never die. Number 5, Randy Orton again. So I'm pretty sure that nobody actually thinks that Randy Orton got burnt by Alexa Bliss. We all understand what wrestling is, but if we are talking about performers selling it as if something has really damaged them, then you've got to give a round of applause to the legend Viper Killer Man. He smashed it out the park. Wearing a mask that covered his supposed injuries, Randy also started ranting and raving like he was a loon and gave an RKO to Alexa Bliss to try and get some sort of revenge. But now, of course, the question is simple. Is he putting these injuries on to try and lure the Fiend out of death or wherever the hell he's gone? Or has he actually got a burned face? Again, we know in reality he hasn't, but within the narrative, this is what you're asking yourself. It also added another layer to Randy's character and kind of sums up where he is with promos right now. You can give him any kind of gibberish and you can give him any kind of nonsense, and he knows how to make it work for him, and only a select few can say that's true. Number 4, the Sandman. There is a lot of eye-related material in pro wrestling. I mean, in 2020 alone, we had Seth Rollins trying to rip out Rey Mysterio's seeing device, but nothing compares to what ECW did in 1994. And because it did go down in an Extreme Championship Wrestling, all this had the edge that you may have not have got if you had seen it, irony, elsewhere. Because in an absolutely brutal match between the Sandman and Tommy Dreamer, Tommy put a cigarette out in Sandman's eye and he sold it like he was blind. It ruined Dreamer because he felt like he had cost the Sandman his career and even decided to dedicate the rest of his wrestling days to the legacy of the Sandman, who was going, oh, I can't believe it, I gotta go away forever. Of course, this was just pro wrestling being pro wrestling. At the November to Remember pay-per-view during his farewell ceremony, Sandman revealed that he'd made it all up and he whooped Tommy Dreamer's ass. This was excellent. It was yet another perfect way to continue a feud that many had started to say, well, maybe we've gone past our sell-by date. And also, you just didn't, I'm going to say it again, but you just didn't see this stuff anywhere else. And it's why so many people love ECW. Number 3, Owen Heart. Keep it simple is a long-touted phrase, and whoever was touting it was right. Case in point, Mr. Owen Heart. In 1996, the King of Hearts was selling a forearm injury to such a degree he decided he deserved sympathy from the audience, while simultaneously in matches using the cast to win. He was quite the character. During his interviews too, Owen would continually put himself over as a hero and once again look at the fans and say, hey, why aren't you giving me some love? This is preposterous, before of course he was caught out and everybody just lost it. Seriously though, he took this concept and ran with it for ages and continued to generate heat after heat after heat after heat. And it did everything that it was meant to do, including pissing off the WWE Universe, even though they weren't the WWE Universe back then. And the irony was, even though that the youngest Hart was acting like a villain, when you understood what he was doing, he just became the best guy ever. Number 2, Eddie Guerrero. The finish to Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 20 is an all-time classic, and they didn't even need to come up with anything fancy to finish this off, because it was Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle, the fans would have accepted whatever. But after being caught in the ankle lock, Guerrero started to sell his foot like something was wrong, so he undid the laces of his boot to try and get some air and take some of the pressure off so he could continue to wrestle. This was like a moth to the flame for the Olympic gold medalist, because he was like, man, I'm gonna stick on that ankle, I'm gonna break it. And he never saw it coming. Because when he did go for the ankle lock again, it allowed Eddie to get out of it simply by taking his boot off and surprising Kurt with the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. And oh my gosh, we all lost it. It was true genius. I mean, it was great then, it was great now, it'll still be great in 100 years' time, and it tied into the whole character of Eddie Guerrero when he lied, he cheated, and he stealed. And don't forget, there is more to this too, because Eddie had been injured by the ankle lock, but he just over-exaggerated it, and within the match, came up with a plan. This is why sometimes it is awesome to look at things in kayfabe. Number 1, Triple H. In the late 90s, Jim Ross started to call Triple H the cerebral assassin, and in October 99, Hunter Hearst Helmsley proved exactly why that was the case. Because the WWE champion walked out to the ring before getting on a microphone and telling Vince McMahon, "I'm gonna have to give up the WWE title," because his face had just looked like it'd been beaten in with a bat. And he was gonna surrender his belt to Steve Austin, who had been responsible for this. Because on Raw, Stone Cold had locked him in a room with a rattlesnake, and this must have been the result. And the best part of all of it, of course, was that Austin didn't actually care about this, and he was pleased that Hunter was in this kind of a way, but he still let his guard down just enough, which allowed the game to strike. Kind of like the rattlesnake. The bruising had all been makeup, so this was a proper over-the-top angle, but that's why it was so great, and both guys sold it so well. You should go back and watch this. Over 20 years later, it's still pretty damn good. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know about any other times wrestlers faked injuries, and you're going to talk about Mark Henry, but that was different. He was faking retirement. He didn't have an injury to begin with. Or maybe he did, but he didn't talk about it. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles like this one. You can follow What Culture on social media. Just search for the name, and you can watch more videos here on YouTube, and I know you know how to do it. You're already here. My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you for watching me as always, and I will see you on the next one.